Long before the first seeds were planted for agriculture, deep in the harsh winters of the Ice Age, a wild animal stepped toward the warmth of a human campfire. That moment marked the beginning of our very first domestication. But pinning down exactly when that first campfire meeting happened is incredibly difficult. For decades, researchers have relied on the archaeological record, and ancient bones can easily deceive us. You might think that finding a 34,000-year-old canine skeleton buried right next to a human would be definitive proof of early pet ownership. It isn't. Ancient peoples routinely buried wild animals alongside their dead for various reasons. The other issue is morphology, the study of the physical shape of the bones. When you only have a single tooth or a fragmented piece of a skull to examine, the physical differences between a wild wolf and an early domestic dog are virtually non-existent. Because of this, modern testing has regularly debunked past discoveries. When scientists run advanced DNA tests on remains they thought were very early dogs, the bones often turn out to be wolves. Until recently, the oldest universally confirmed dog capped out at around 10,900 years ago. To find the true timeline of our oldest friendship, researchers realized they needed a different approach. They had to abandon the shape of the bones and start looking deep inside the cells. That cellular approach led to two massive genetic analyses recently published in the journal Nature, pushing the timeline of domestication backward by thousands of years. The first study, led by Anders Bergstrom, was immense in scale. His team tracked down and sampled the remains of 216 different canines buried near humans across thousands of years of European history. A second study, by researchers Lockie Scarisbrooke and William Marsh, took a highly focused approach. They zeroed in on just 8 specific ancient canine remains, including samples from a 15,800-year-old cave site in Turkey known as Pınarbaşı. Both teams applied strict genetic methodology, isolating nuclear DNA, the blueprint inside a cell, and mitochondrial DNA from the mother. This visualization traces those markers, showing how a single ancestral line eventually split into distinct, diverging tracks for wolves and domestic dogs. The data revealed a breakthrough. 6 samples in the focus study were confirmed as dogs, and they were genetically similar to each other. This means a consistent, distinct lineage of domestic dogs was already widespread across Europe between 14,200 and 14,300 years ago. The genetics cut through the ambiguity of the physical fossils. Our ancestors were actively living side by side with genuine dogs thousands of years earlier than the fossil record previously proved. These ancient pets didn't look like the modern breeds you see at a dog park today. The genetics suggest they would have resembled smaller, leaner wolves. Researchers describe them as the Ice Age equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. They were highly adaptable, multi-purpose tools that could hunt, guard the camp, and fit the specific survival needs of completely different tribes. The Anatolian hunter-gatherers, for example, extended a form of personhood to their canines, carefully burying young puppies alongside deceased humans. In Western Europe, the Magdalenian culture integrated dogs into their own intense practices. They performed identical symbolic rituals, including funerary cannibalism and post-mortem butchery, on both human and dog remains alike. Across radically different environments and cultural traditions, early people elevated these animals from working beasts to deeply integrated members of their societies. That ancient relationship eventually faced a massive historical disruption. Around 12,000 years ago, the invention of agriculture in the Middle East triggered a huge, aggressive wave of human migration. As migrating farmers pushed into Europe, the demographic shift was immense. This map illustrates that sweeping wave radiating outward from the Middle East, a migration that ultimately replaced up to 90% of the native human genetic ancestry in Europe. You would expect the local dogs to be wiped out alongside the human populations, but the genetic data reveals a twist. The incoming farmers actively chose to keep the local European dogs and incorporate them into their newly established agricultural societies. Because those early farmers decided to preserve them, the ancient European dog lineage survived the upheaval. Their genetic legacy persists today, embedded in the DNA of modern breeds like the German Shepherd. We now have a scientifically confirmed baseline. 14,000 years ago, genetically distinct dogs were a fully integrated species spanning an entire continent. Biological domestication, however, is a slow, multi-generational process. It requires countless cycles of breeding and adaptation over huge spans of time. If dogs were already physically distinct from wolves and deeply embedded in human culture 14,000 years ago, the initial split must have happened much earlier, likely outside of Europe entirely. We have pushed the timeline back, but the hunt for our very first animal companion is still going.